Good day everyone, so I am Aljin N. Loayon and today we will be talking about hegemony. So what is hegemony? The term hegemony refers to the leadership, dominance, or great influence that one entity or group of people has over others. So this word is derived from the Greek verb hegestai, which translates as to lead. Early leaders who were able to exert control and influence over a group of people might be referred to as hegemons. So a hegemon had to have the support from at least one dominant class of people to keep the population as a whole from rebelling against the leadership. Historically, this term often referred to a city-state or country that exerted power over the city-states or countries indirectly rather than through military force. So modern uses of hegemony often refer to a group in a society having power for others within that society. Let's say, for instance, the wealthy class might be said to have hegemony over the poor because of its ability to use its money to influence many aspects of society and government. Hegemony more often refers to the power of a single group in a society to essentially lead and dominate over other groups in the society. This might be done by controlling forms of communication, by influencing voters, or influencing government leaders. Some lobbying groups, say for instance, might have hegemony status over leaders in Congress. Rules that would prohibit or limit political spending by special interest groups are designed to reduce their dominance and allow individual voters to have more control. So Antonio Gramsci was a leading Marxist thinker. He rejected economism, insisting on the independence of ideology from economic determinism. So Gramsci also rejected crude materialism, offering a humanist version of Marxism which focused on human subjectivity. So Gramsci used the term hegemony to denote the predominance of one social class over others. This represents not only political and economic control, but also the ability of the dominant class to project its own way of seeing the world so that those who are subordinated by it accept it as common sense and natural. So commentators stress that this involves willing and active consent. Common sense is the way a subordinate class lives its subordination. Gramsci emphasizes struggle. He noted that common sense is not something rigid and immobile, but is continually transforming itself. As Fisk puts it, consent must be constantly won and re-won, for people's material social experience constantly reminds them of the disadvantages of subordination and thus poses a threat to the dominant class. Hegemony possessed a constant contradiction between ideology and the social experience of the subordinate that makes this interface into an inevitable site of ideological struggle. References in the mass media in terms of an ideological site of struggle are recurrent in the commentaries of those influenced by this perspective. Gramsci's stance involved a rejection of economism since it saw a struggle for ideological hegemony as a primary factor in radical change. Cultural hegemony is the philosophic and sociological concept originated by the Marxist philosopher Antonio Gramsci. He said that a culturally diverse society can be ruled or dominated by one of its social classes. It is the dominance of one social group over another, say for instance, the ruling class over all other classes. The theory claims that the ideas of the ruling class come to be seen as the norm. They are seen as universal ideologies, perceived to benefit anyone whilst only really benefiting the ruling class. For example, in advanced industrial societies, hegemonic culture innovations such as compulsory schooling, mass media, and popular culture had indoctrinated workers for a false consciousness. So instead of working towards a revolution that would truly serve their collective needs, workers in advanced societies were listening to the rhetoric of nationalist leaders, seeking consumer opportunities and middle-class status, embracing an individualist ethos of success through competition, and are competing the guidance of bourgeois religious leaders. So in India, cultural hegemony can be seen through the consenting trend of professions such as engineering and medicine over other professions. So there are at least 5 basic dimensions of the concept of hegemony, ranging from gross and obvious to more subtle. Hegemony is much more than simple domination because of its more subtle dimensions found later on this list. So these are the military, economic, political, institutional, and ideological. So first we have the military. The hegemon has the strongest military in the world, significantly stronger than any of its rivals. Its military alliance system is significantly stronger than any military blocs. So second is the economic. The hegemon has the largest and most technically advanced economy in the world. It is a major trading partner of most of the nations of the world, including most of the major powers. Third is the political. Hegemon has a wide range of political allies and friendly relations with most nations and major powers. So fourth, the institutional. The hegemon, working with its allies, makes most of the rules that govern global political and economic relations. The hegemon, along with its allies, usually controls most of the international institutions. Thus, most of the policies of the international institutions favor the hegemon and its alliance. So, last is the ideological. The hegemon largely determines the terms of discourse in global relations. So, Marx once wrote, "The ruling ideas of any age are the ideas of the ruling class." Today, the predominant ideas about globalizations are the ideas of hegemon. So, besides money, other forms of influence can be used by one group to dominate others. For example, control of the media can influence things such as what shows get aired or concealed, and the degree to which a television station covers or does not cover certain news stories. So in the late 20th century and early 21st century, however, this dominance was reduced because the internet gave individuals and small companies more access and control over different forms of media such as news and music. So people became able to self-publish music, videos, texts, and other works of arts rather than being under the control of broadcasting, publishing, or other types of corporations. So in addition, a greater variety of these works became available to consumers. News came to disseminated through blogs and social networking websites in addition to traditional media outlets. All of these things reduced the hegemony of large corporations in the news and entertainment industries. What exactly is the meaning of hegemony? So, dominant groups in society, including fundamentally but not exclusively the ruling class, maintain their dominance by securing the spontaneous consent of subordinate groups, including the working class, through the negotiated construction of a political and ideological consensus which incorporates both dominant and dominated groups. So, a class had succeeded in persuading the other classes of society to accept its own moral, political, and cultural values. So the concept assumes a plain consent given by the majority of a population to a certain direction suggested by those in power. However, this consent is not always peaceful and may combine physical force or coercion with intellectual, moral, and cultural inducement. So this can be understood as common sense, a cultural universe where a dominant ideology is practiced and spread. So it is something which emerges out of social and class struggles and serve to shape and influence people's mind. So it is a set of ideas by means of which dominant groups strive to secure the consent of subordinate groups to other leadership. So most American specialists in international relations and many of their European counterparts believed in the theory of hegemonic stability. Simply stated, this theory argues that the hegemonic power plays a crucial role in maintaining stability and order in the world system. In other words, the hegemon is the most benign power in the global system, because the hegemon is the power that benefits most from the existing world system. The hegemon has the greatest stake in keeping the system functioning. The military power of the hegemon keeps the peace, discouraging challengers to the global order. So the economy of the hegemon is the engine that drives international economic growth and development. In order to preserve its network of alliance, the hegemon is the political broker who moderates disputes between other powers, thus keeping them from escalating into serious conflict. So the hegemon seeks to bind other states into the global order and thus plays a leading role in developing global institutions that manage international security and economic relations. So the hegemon is often the source and usually a propagator of ideas about world order and security. Say for instance, current concepts of globalization are shaped largely by American intellectuals. So in the words of former Secretary of the State Madeleine Albright, so the hegemon is the indispensable nation, the one that talks tall and looks forward. On the other hand, the theory of hegemonic instability argues that hegemony is a destructive force in the global system. The hegemon uses its military power to impose its will around the world, raising the level of violence associated with regional political conflicts. So the economy of the hegemon sucks resources from less developed economies and twists development around the globe to fit its insatiable appetites rather than benefit the peoples of the world. So the alliance system of the hegemon virtually guarantees that peoples and states excluded from the hegemon's councils will be forced into a series of counter-hegemonic alliances. Conflict between the hegemonic alliance system and the counter-hegemonic alliance system was the source of the two world wars and the Cold War. So the military competition between the hegemonic and counter-hegemonic alliances turns many otherwise manageable political disputes into violent conflict. The rules and values of the international institutions constructed by the hegemon are blatantly unfair. The hegemon represents its own narrow national interest as the interest of global society, while in fact, global institutions serve to expand the power and wealth of the hegemon. Just a dictator within a nation proclaims himself the protector of and voice of the people while actually surprisingly exploiting the people. The hegemon claims to be protector of international order and the driving force of global prosperity. But in the truth, the hegemon spreads disorder, repression, and exploitation. So, hegemony and the media. Ramsey believed that the media have always played a key role in teaching people to do things in their everyday lives that support the power structures. In media studies today, people look at how the media support power structures such as government, capitalism or corporations, and patriarchy. Let's say, for instance, a news report that shows strong support for a controversial foreign policy decision can be said to hegemonically support the government. Another example, a home improvement network that makes it seem normal to own high-end granite countertops and stainless steel appliances can said to be hegemonically supporting the capitalist economic system. Another example, a game show that shows scantily clad women passively standing still until the host tells her to open the case, but can be seen as hegemonically promoting patriarchy. So, media can also be seen as being counter-hegemonic. An episode of a sitcom that questions traditional women's roles, for example, might be seen as counter-hegemonic. So, might a documentary that questions the government's involvement in a war. So, Antonio Gramsci's conceptualization of hegemony has become an important part of the media studies discipline and media studies classes around the world. So, this concept has contributed a valuable vocabulary for discussing the relationship between media and power. So, in conclusion, the vast concept of hegemony can be summarized as hegemony is not a static concept, it is a relational one. It implies relations with groups, between groups, and between groups and social structures. So the world is not flat and history is not mechanical. Hegemony reflects the fact that history is an open-ended process based on a multitude of different layers, structures, groups, and relations. So that's all for the topic hegemony. Thank you.